Welcome back to the Two Dudes, Three Legs podcast with your host, Zach Dingee.
Tony Cappelletti.
Today, we sit down with Nick Becker.
An old family friend.
That's right. We share his story, and
Good
my
old
God,
PV boy.
is it a story? From the military, being overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, to leukemia, to being in politics. He's got some crazy shit that he talks about on this podcast.
A lot of perspective here, people. You're going to want to stick around.
He's lived a lot of life, and this is a great story, so tune in.
Oh, you fucking gonna be famous.
Guys are looking sharp.
Zach Dingee,
Tony
Two
Cappelletti.
Dudes, Three Legs podcast, where we share business tips, interview experts,
And travel the world.
This week on Two Dudes, Three Legs.
So, Nick, you have had quite an interesting journey in this thing we call life. You've lived many different lives.
Yeah.
You're a veteran.
Yep.
Thank you for your service.
Appreciate it.
You're
Thanks.
a cancer survivor.
Yep.
And I think the hardest thing of all was you worked in politics. That's tough.
That's tough. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah. I did a little bit of everything in politics. I ran for a local office. I also worked on campaigns, and then I also worked in the government side of things, where I was a constituent services representative for a couple of congressmen in the area too. So, I got to talk to constituents through that, and then I got to serve on the town board, and then. Yeah, I got to see like the political side of things for campaigning and stuff like that. So
Right. Well, let's run it back. I want to start. So you graduate out of high school and you make your way into the armed forces.
Yep,
right after high school.
Play us through how that happens.
pretty much. So I actually went. So right after I graduated, I actually went to Western New England College that fall semester of what would have been my freshman year. I don't know if you know what a low GPA was.
Low GPA.
Anyway, I don't even think it was like a 1. So I always wanted to join the military.
Were you playing ball there or anything? Were you?
I was actually doing Army ROTC there.
So you had plans.
I had plans. At that point, the goal was to go through college and then go into the Army as an officer at that point. But then, first semester away from home, and came back after that first semester and decided to enlist. And so I enlisted that January of 2007.
Into Army.
So I enlisted into the Army National Guard. And then I went to basic training, the regular Army basic training, like active duty goes. I did that. I came home, and I think within like a year, like constant deployments were coming up, because at the time we were in 2 wars. We were in Iraq and Afghanistan. So
What year is this?
2007, 2008.
2007. Okay.
And then actually my uncle, Trevor Urista, who's also a Pleasant Valley native, who's got an interesting history at Arlington too, like doing senior pranks and things like that. And his father actually worked at Arlington. He was a tech teacher, I think, or something like that. But anyway.
All Arlington boys.
Yep. He was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2008. And I think like the next day I called my unit commander and I was like, "Hey, put me on a deployment list. Like, let's go. Like, let's get out of here. I can't be here." So
That takes some balls.
I don't know. I think it was just an emotional reaction really at the start,
But to think like, wow, we just lost someone. I need to go to where that happened and be part of that. I think that takes a man.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're being nice. I think it was more about revenge than anything.
Oh, so you were emotionally overtaken by the situation.
Yeah. I mean, I was very close with him. He was definitely he was my uncle, but he was more like a big brother to me.
Okay.
We were really close. So then.
And typically when someone asks to be deployed, does that just mean all of a sudden they're going to deploy you? You ask and then they do it?
Yeah. I mean, at that time, right? So that was only 6-7 years after 9/11 happened. So yeah, I mean, there were constant rotations, constant deployments, even, National Guard, active duty guys, like it was all one basically at that time. So within, I think, 6 months, I was put in a unit up out of the Albany area, out of Latham, New York. And And then by the summer of 2009, we were heading over to Iraq. So
What was your role in the military when you were in Iraq?
I was military police.
Okay.
I did a lot of force protection. I did a lot of, which just means I worked base security.
Okay.
But I also did a lot of QRF, which is quick reaction force. So if there was another unit in the area that got hit with an IED or got hit with small arms fire and needed backup, we would get the call. Every area is broken down so that there are QRF forces in each zone. Right. So in our zone, we were one of the QRF forces. So we would get called if anyone was hit in our area. And then we were the first to respond, either to secure an area, to sit on an area, or to do whatever else. So
Are you guys trained in like paramedics in case there's injuries? And
yeah, so we were pretty well trained. I mean, all the way up to putting IVs in each other if we needed to. I got some crazy stories on practicing putting IVs into each other, especially people we didn't really like.
oh, jeez. Well, tell one.
Yeah, like, come here, I don't like you. I'm going to practice my IV training.
Poke it 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, I think I missed
I
again.
can't. That thing keeps on disappearing. Son of a bitch. Yeah.
So what kind of kit are you geared up with? What kind of equipment are you using over there?
When you're called for QRF.
So I had a full kit in terms of I had my M9 ammo for the M9, which is a 9mm Beretta, and then I had a full body armor, and then on top of the body armor I had like M4 ammo and things like that. I was still young. I was still like brand new basically, so I was the lowest ranking guy. So I was up in the turret in a Humvee. So I had an M4, but I also had a 50 cal weapon up on top. So I had that. I had like the M4 sort of like in the turret next to me, and then I had the 50 cal like right
The
here.
Mod Deuce?
The mod.
That's the most
Mod
badass.
freaking Deuce.
I feel
That's
like
the most badass gun in
the
the
lower
fucking
rank.
world.
You said you're a lower ranking official, but I feel like that's a badass fucking position to be in on the turret.
Yeah, you felt pretty badass when you were up there. You did feel invincible.
Yeah,
I remember like our base got and we had a really small base. Like it was an outpost.
Got it.
So getting hit with artillery or like rounds from the outside, didn't really miss much, right? Because we were such a small base. And I remember the first time we got hit, I was like angry, like I wasn't really, like I guess I was scared for like the first few seconds, but then I just got angry. Like, man, these guys are trying to fucking kill me, like, yeah, I don't know if you ever had that feeling before, but, and then, just being up in that turret, getting ready to go out and trying to find the people that just did that. That was a feeling I'll never forget. Yeah, that was crazy.
And you fired on locations where you believe people to be?
That specific incident, no, because by the time we had capabilities of knowing exactly, we call it the POO site. So it was the point of origin site of where that came from. So by the time we got there, it was 2 pickup trucks with like mortar tubes in the back.
Is that a booby trap? Was that rigged up?
It could have been. In that case, no, it wasn't. We did call EOD, EOD, which is the guys that come and take care of that.
Yep.
But that wasn't rigged, and everyone was gone by the time we got there. So there was no actual firefight or anything like that.
How often were you in like real gunfights or firefights or shootings? Like how often were you? Shouldn't say. Let me ask, how often were you called out to go after a shooting? Like every day? This is a daily thing?
No. Where we were in Iraq, we were in Basra, Iraq, which is like the southern part of Iraq. For the most part, anytime we did hear IEDs going off or hear small arms fire, it was mostly actually just for annoyance.
Annoyance?
Annoyance.
Like them just
Just trying to mess with us a little bit, right? So either them
gotta
trying
be
to
part of their tactic. 'Cause
Yeah, it is.
It's about all they can do, right?
they're trying to learn our tactics, right? So they might do something to see how we respond, and then they adapt to that. So like our techniques were constantly adapting because their techniques were constantly adapting.
Yep.
Right. When they figured out that we had, really good ways of sniffing out their IEDs in the ground that they would plant before they blew up, they created this thing called, I think it's called, I don't even remember. It was called like EDF or something like that, where it like came out the side of it was on the side of the road. And it was like an explosion that would come out and just rip through any car or truck or anything from the side. So instead of it coming up from underneath like an IED, they built it so that it would come across. And then we would adapt, right? We would get up armored vehicles and like things like that. And so we would, but it seemed like they were always one step ahead.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What are some of the daily bullshit that you have to deal with when you're out there? Like things people would never think about. I don't know, going to the bathroom, working out, whatever it is, like the shit that nobody thinks about, but it's just a nuisance all the time.
Yeah. So I think one thing that drove me crazy anyway was just sort of like the standards and the rules that went along with them. Mm-hmm. So like it could be 2:00 in the morning and you gotta take a leak, right? Well, Army says that, or at least our commander said that if you were going from the tent, anywhere outside the tent, our tent, you had to be either in full uniform, or if you were like going to the bathroom or want to take a shower or something like that, you had to have your PT uniform, which was just your shorts, a t-shirt, but it had to be tucked in. Mm-hmm. And like you had to be fully shaved no matter what time of night or day it was. And so like just the fact that waking up at 3:00 in the morning, maybe you were in your boxers and you were walking literally from me to Bryce to go to the porta potty, right? Like no one else was out there, right? Like you had to get dressed, like, because if you got caught, you didn't want the consequences, right? Yeah. So you just had to do it. So like stuff like that. We didn't really have hot meals where we were.
I thought everything was hot over there.
Yeah. Fucking leave it outside.
Yeah.
What was there like drugs and alcohol abuse over there?
Can I plead the fifth?
Yes, you can, but by pleading the fifth, you've said a lot.
No, I mean, look, I don't know about like drugs, but we weren't technically allowed to have alcohol.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Were there nights where we were able to find some Iraqi whiskey? Yeah.
Cool.
Were there nights where we did a little bonfire and my buddy had a little guitar and we kind of enjoyed the night? And, yeah, sure.
Yeah, what's it like? Are you on the job 24/7, 360? Like when you're there, you're on it.
So yes and no, right? So yes, in the sense that if something does happen, like if your base is about to be overrun, or if there is an attack, or if there is a mortar attack, or something like that,
you need to be ready to go like this.
You need to be ready like that. However, there are missions that you go out, and usually the missions are when you get back from the mission. Like if you have to do a convoy, like I did some convoy security stuff over there, or some personal security stuff, where I'd have to go out on a mission to protect a colonel from going from point A to point B. And so we would be his security team and stuff like that. I did a lot more of that when I was in Afghanistan a couple of years later. That's pretty much all I did in Afghanistan. But for Iraq, we had missions. So when I worked force protection, it was like 12-hour shifts. And generally speaking, as long as everything was calm and, not anything crazy going on, at the end of that shift, you were done. You didn't have to do anything for another 12 hours. So you go to the gym. We had a gym. I wouldn't call it a great gym, but it was a gym. Went for a run around the compound, things like that, stayed in shape. And then the rest of your time was the rest of your time.
Or was it like in the movies where like the compound itself was built by like out of just straight up like 2x4s, and like you guys were building it yourselves and taking care of everything yourself? I
mean, by the time I got there, the base was already built. I think the British actually were in control of that area, like during the invasion of Iraq. So they were the ones that built the base. But it was basically these huge bags filled with sand, and then like T-wall, so like concrete wall barriers, about, I don't know, I would now I would guess 15 to 20 feet high. Wow. But yeah, it was on us to kind of keep it together, keep it going and stuff like that.
Was
and
there AC in there?
We had AC in our tents. We were able to get AC in our tents.
Okay.
The one thing that sucked was we didn't have AC in the porta potties.
Oh God.
So imagine if you have to.
Oh, that sucks.
You could probably still smell it.
At 4:00 in the afternoon, after the rest of the 100 people
Use it.
use it.
Oh God.
I mean, we had more than one, but still,
Okay, so you
in
did,
120 degree heat.
you did 2 tours, correct?
I did 2 tours.
Okay, so
were the years?
take me through your mentality. You're fresh. You're going on your first tour. You're flying out to a foreign country, going to war. Tell me about the man who left for war versus the man who came back from his first tour. Tell me how that changed you.
It actually opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that I think with anyone that goes and experiences something not what they're used to, right? So it opened my eyes completely to what I would call true poverty really is, right? Like they're dirt poor. Like it's it's completely different from how their middle class and their lower class is completely different than how our middle class and lower class is. And they do have a lower class, they do have a middle class, and they do have an upper class. Again, it's completely different. So that in the back of my mind, coming home sort of really changed from I went over there angry, like I said, because of my uncle. I came back with friends and relationships that I developed that were Iraqi and of the local culture. And I appreciated that a lot more as I got to know them and as I got to sort of experience their culture and everything. So it really opened my eyes to just be more open-minded in general, I guess.
What year did you come back, Nick, from the first tour? You went over around 2008. You said?
I went over in the beginning of 2009. I came back in like middle of 2010.
And was the tour anything like you thought it was going to be? What you had anticipated?
You know, I really thought I really didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
You train and you go through the motions, right? And you're sort of expecting through the training that you're gonna save the world, right? I mean, you're feeling like you watch the movie Sniper and you watch all these movies and you're like, yeah, I want to be a hero. And then you go over there and it's like, okay, well, I'm doing my part and there's other people doing their part. And like, obviously Sniper was a Navy SEAL sniper. I was not a Navy SEAL sniper, but you watch those movies and you think like, yeah, I could see myself doing that. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think it was just sort of relative in that sense.
Okay. So you come back.
Sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah. You come back from the first tour. You have this new appreciation, I'm sure, for where we come from after seeing the other side.
Definitely.
And then your second tour, you're forced to go on it. You opt again to go. How does that happen?
I opted again to go.
Okay. And you're going out there this time, not angry.
Nope.
But just to go do your service.
So the second time through, I realized that I was good at it. I knew that in a panic type situation, everything actually slowed down for me. Some people, it doesn't slow down. Anytime I'm in a stressful situation, anytime it's most people would think of them like not knowing what to do. For whatever reason, it just all kind of slowed down for me a little bit. I also was given the opportunity to go to personal security school through the Department of Defense prior to my second deployment. And so the catch was if I went to that school, or I would get to go to that school if I deployed with this unit that was going to Afghanistan. So, and that's a rare opportunity for someone in the National Guard. Usually that's reserved for your active duty guys.
So you excelled.
Yeah. It was great.
And then Afghanistan, how many years was that?
In Afghanistan,
yeah.
I did about think it was like 11 months in country.
Okay.
Got it.
And similar experience, the poverty and
So that I will say, I when I got to kind of go out into the area outside the base, which was a lot, most of it was on a Black Hawk because I was actually working for a 2-star general at the time, being his security detail, me and a team of guys.
and that's the most high up person you worked around, I assume, through both deployments.
Yeah. That was Yep.
That's how high up. 2-star general.
Yeah. So Afghanistan was broken up into 4 because it was a NATO. That was a NATO mission. So Iraq wasn't a NATO mission, but Afghanistan was. And so because we had, the Italians, the British, all of the NATO countries, each zone was designated for a different commanding officer. I was in RC North in Afghanistan, and that was a 2-star Marine Corps general. Yep.
How badass is it to fly around in a fucking Black Hawk?
You have no fucking clue. It is so badass.
That is a dream of, I think, everybody.
And
yeah.
that thing's
Black Hawk
outfitted
is?
with 50
Yeah.
cals on the side and probably the what's it called?
The 240 Bravo, I think, was on there. The 50 cal.
I got to shoot an M240
Yeah.
in Florida.
Yeah.
Fully auto.
That's exactly
It was the
what
best
we had.
3 seconds of my life.
Yeah, literally.
Fucking
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah. That's a fun weapon to shoot. Yeah.
And
definitely.
wait, doesn't the Black Hawk have a Gatling gun, or am I just do I?
I don't know. So to be completely honest, I was part of the security detail. I wasn't on the actual weapon systems.
Right.
It was the Army. It was the Black Hawk team members.
Yeah.
That were on the weapon systems. I know there was a 240. I know there was a 50 cal. There might have been a Gatling on one of them too. I'm not sure. I just know that when the general got off the bird, so did we.
That's it.
Or actually,
Yeah.
we got off the bird and then they got
General,
off the bird.
yeah. What was the most dangerous situation you found yourself in either place?
So I guess it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
I would say, and this is when one of my close buddies got injured, not from any combat or enemy contact or anything like that. But what happened was we got thrown together a mission almost at the last second for the general to go out to this provincial area to do sort of a meet and greet, or I don't know if it was a meet and greet. It was some sort of meeting with the provincial people, Afghan governor or something like that. We had just coming off a 12-hour shift. Not me, but the part of our unit had just come off a 12-hour shift and no sleep. And instead of taking the birds, the general, for some reason, because it was close, I think is the reason, wanted to take the up armored vehicles out there. And so when a general travels somewhere, it's not just the general, right? It's the general, it's his sergeant major that's supporting him administratively, and then it's the lieutenant that's supporting the and then there's State Department guys, probably a couple CIA guys. So we had a big group of people in there, right? And somehow we got tasked with doing this mission where we had 4 or 5 trucks, I think, maybe 3 or 4 trucks. And our drivers didn't get any sleep. And now I was on the security detail, so my job was to stay in the back with the general and basically to get out with him, go to the meeting, while the other guys stayed in the vehicles. That way, when he goes back, we can just mount up and head back, right?
Yep.
Well, one of our drivers was turning a corner, and so in Afghanistan, on every main road, there's these huge, I don't know what you even call them, not culverts, but
Like a barrier?
like holes along the side of the road.
Really?
Right? There's
Like
huge,
sewage type shit?
like sewage type shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when he was making a right-hand turn, he overcut the back tire, and so that back tire got stuck in that ditch, right?
Oh God.
So we Now, we knew that there was intel that the area at the time was mostly safe.
Yes.
What you would call safe in that area. We also knew that Kunduz, a town that was probably about a 45-minute helicopter flight, was also being taking contact, small arms fire the day before, a couple days before that. Not really anything crazy, but they were just annoying them again, trying to see probably our response, trying to see out. Which is funny. A couple months after I left Afghanistan, Kunduz fell to the Taliban after that. Wow. But so that's why we were a little nervous. And even having mortars coming at me in Iraq and taking a couple of pop shots here and there, like that never really scared me. This moment scared me because now we had to get out of the vehicles. We had to expose ourselves in the middle of a city. Like this was like, picture there, this was Mazar-e Sharif. So picture like, I don't know, Baltimore, right? Right. So it was like Baltimore, right? So not New York City, but still a pretty large city. And I have them in my ear. I can hear what's going on. And we have guys that never had been outside the wire, completely freaking out over the headsets. Now, purposely, I didn't give the general or the sergeant major a headset just so that if something did happen, they wouldn't have to hear all this crap that was going on. And one of my closest buddies decided that he was going to sort of take charge of the situation, which, he was higher ranking. He was a E6, a staff sergeant. And so he got out of the vehicle in front of us. So I was in the vehicle that got stuck in the culvert, or whatever you want to call it. He got out in the vehicle in front of us to sort of be a guide to back the vehicle up and then hook up our, whatever you want, the ropes to sort of pull us out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The driver didn't see him or lost contact or lost visual with him. And he got crushed between two trucks.
Oh, holy fuck.
So now he's down. We're trying to call for a medevac. The general wants to keep going to the meeting. He's not really exactly sure what's going on with the whole thing. He doesn't really know we have a casualty at that point. And it's, he's in life or death. And he's one of my closest friends, over there. And so I sort of had to zone that out and we kind of charged on. And then on the way back, when the meeting was done, even though we were only 25 minutes away, we still had to call for a medevac, come, pop smoke, and we rushed him over to the medevac, and he went right to the hospital on the base. I know that doesn't really sound dangerous, but with the intel that we had from the Kunduz thing, like if any sniper
you guys
were
are with
sitting
high-profile targets,
right? Exactly.
So
and that
anything could go down at any moment, and you've put yourself in a precarious situation where, if they were ever going to attack, that would have been
the key moment. And we had tired drivers, we had tired crew. Like
it would have been
that mission.
Storm.
That mission never should have happened.
Yeah.
And I even voiced my concerns before that mission to our leadership, and they were like, "Well, no, we got to do the job."
See, that's like a fear of the unknown thing. It's like when you're getting shot at, you're getting shot
it's
at.
also
but when you don't know what's about to happen and you're in the middle of shit, you're like, you don't know what the fuck's coming,
Yeah. So,
Jesus. So
he's doing okay now.
Yeah. What happened to the guy? You get crushed by two fucking.
Yeah. So he got medevac to the hospital on base, and then he got flown. I think the day after, or relatively soon after that, to Germany, and then he got flown back to Walter Reed, and he had to go through some he had some internal stuff
crushed
going on.
His ribs, shit like that.
Absolutely, and some organs, some issues with organs and stuff. Yep. But he's doing great now, man. I mean, he's one of the toughest sons of bitches I've ever met. So he actually deployed with me to Iraq too. So him and I, this was our second deployment. He went to PSD school with me too, which is why he deployed quick after that too. So him and I have always been pretty close. Yeah. And he was NYPD. He was NYPD for years. He was Port Authority. Yeah. So.
And now, so you do this tour, and you said you were doing it so that you could gain access to a course for, what was it again you said?
PSD. So they said part of our mission that we got assigned from Army Command, whatever, says that part of our mission is to do security services for the RC North commander, right? So in order for us to be able to do that, we have to send a certain number of guys to PSD school. At that time, that unit that I was in, it was a different unit from the unit that I deployed with previously.
In Iraq, yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't really have anyone that had combat experience. And they especially didn't really have that many people that had PSD experience already. And so, I wouldn't say that I had PSD experience from Iraq, but I had been on a couple of missions where I worked PSD. I don't really know if that makes sense, but I basically set up in a gun on a PSD mission, making sure nobody messed with us. That's pretty much all I did.
Yeah.
But because I think of my just general experience overall, they asked me if I wanted to do that. And so I went to that. That took about a month, I think, or a little over a month. Came back from that. A couple months later, went over to Afghanistan. Yep.
Okay.
Now, a lot of it sounds everything sounds very organized. And then there's another part of my head that thinks it's very chaotic. So how are your experiences on each mission documented, and how do they gauge it? You know, because you're out there with an isolated unit having an experience that could be, you know, crazy, whether there's kills or whether there's crazy things going on. Then how is that documented on the back end after?
Like officially documented?
I don't know. Yeah. Is it or is it not?
So I think some of it is and some of it isn't. One thing that I got to do in Afghanistan was actually pretty cool too. I think because of my experience and because of for whatever other reasons, I also got put on a team that would actually go out into the cities in our area, in the towns. We went to the local jails. So what happens is if Army Special Forces, or we were working with German Special Forces as well. So if the German Special Forces or our Army Special Forces got wind of any kind of Taliban contacts or any kind of anything suspicious going on, what they would do is they would go out and they would grab the guys and throw them in a local prison under our command. It wasn't in a U.S. prison. It was in a local prison, like a town prison or something like that. But then our job, so this was separate from the PSD. Our job was to then go into these prisons, make sure that the prisoners were being treated according to the Geneva Convention, make sure that, but we were also wanted to get information too, right? So we had like this, it's called a bat and hide system. And we would take their fingerprints, we would take their eye scan, and we put down information, we put down their names, so that if they try to cross the border in Pakistan a couple months later for some extra bad guy training or something like that, it would pop up and we'd be able to know. Yeah. So it's a huge database that we'd have. So that was a fun. And I will say that there was one time when I was in Afghanistan and when I was meeting with one of the prisoners in the prison, and you know when you just look at someone and you can tell they hate you, and you know that they just want to do bad things to you. That was what this guy was looking at, like me.
How did that make you feel?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the only thing I could think of was in that moment was this guy's obviously doing something wrong.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a trial. I don't know if he's actually Taliban or anything, but he's obviously doing something wrong because he's looking at me or maybe he just hates me because I'm American. I don't know. Either way, I don't really like him either, right? And the only thing I could think about at that moment was my uncle. So and you know, it's me and him and like one other, I had a German soldier, which by the way, I still talk to some of the German guys that I deployed with. They're freaking awesome, man. They're rock stars.
Sounded like you were a rock star over there.
No,
yeah, it
I
does
was
sound
just
like
a small piece, man.
So did you fly out before Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan?
No.
So you were there when was that?
No. So he I think he was killed in 2011.
So you were gone.
I didn't go to Afghanistan until 2012. So it was actually after that mission happened.
Understood.
Got it.
Yeah.
Did you have any proximity to that mission at all, or have any?
No,
Okay.
No. I was in the States. I was just as surprised as anyone else.
Got it.
Yeah, no, I was probably at Madison's when that came
Hanging out
across
with
the line.
me. Yeah.
That's funny.
Understood.
All right, I want to move this on to chapter 2 because you have a lot of interesting life experience. So you come back, you're retired from the Army.
I mean, not like technically retired. I actually came back and I was still in the Army National Guard.
With plans to deploy again?
Not right away. Not necessarily with plans to deploy again. I was kind of trying to figure out so I was still in the Army National Guard at the time. So when I came back, I was mostly a civilian with the training requirements, right? Like 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year stuff. So I had to figure out like if I was going to go to school, if I was going to get a job, like I was kind of trying to do that.
Okay. And then the next large life experience you run into is leukemia.
Yeah.
Tell us about how that starts.
So I was, you remember Tim Stabell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Timmy,
Yeah,
my boy.
Timmy. Yeah. So I was working out a lot. I was going to Gold's a lot, and Timmy was kind of my trainer because he knew a lot about that lifting stuff, a lot more than I did. And we were working out every day. I had just gotten a job offer to go do PSD work back in Baghdad for a civilian contractor, though, not through the military.
That's got to pay very well.
Very, very well. Yes. I forget what it was. It was well over $100,000 a year. And I think it was something like, like 120 for a 10-month contract.
Is that to be a mercenary?
And the first 80 is tax-free.
Private security.
I wouldn't call it mercenaries because like mercenaries are kind of like the guys in Russia, the Wagner group that just go out and like fight wars. What my job was going to like work for, as a civilian contractor, work for the State Department. And when their foreign service officers went out into like the public to like do whatever it is that they do, right? Have meetings with local officials and stuff like that, I would be their personal security detail. So like the Secret Service for the president type things.
Super dope.
Got it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I was working out with him. I was getting ready to leave. I was leaving for North Carolina for training for that company. And then shortly after that, I was going to Iraq. But I want to say it was like 6 or 7 days before I left for that training, I got like a toothache. And then it developed into a fever, and then it developed into more pain. My whole face was like swollen up. It looked like I had a baseball in my cheek. And I had no idea what the hell was going on. I went to try to get the dentist, try to figure out if I could just get my teeth removed or, whatever it was, because I had to leave soon, They said, they put me on antibiotics. They weren't working. So they said, all right, we'll go to the ER. You need to go to the ER. You need to get that checked out. Go to the ER. And yeah, in the ER, this guy comes up and he's like, we think you have leukemia. And I look at him, I didn't even know what leukemia was, to be honest with you, right? Like, I figured it was like a cancer, but I didn't really know exactly what kind of cancer or what it was. I look at him, I'm like, no, there's just no way. I honestly thought that they got it wrong. I thought that they mixed up paperwork or something. They mixed up the tests, something like that. Like, I was just like, I'm just about to go do my dream job. This is my last gig. Like, this was it. Like,
How old were you at the time?
25, I think. Dude. 25.
Holy shit.
And yeah, man, no, it was leukemia.
How do they even test for that? I don't understand. You're in an ER.
They give me a full panel blood test. And so leukemia is a blood cancer. And so my white blood cell count was through the roof. I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but they were, like 10 times higher than what they should have been. And usually when they see a white cell count like that, it's usually some sort of leukemia or lymphoma or, something in that area of cancer.
And when people think leukemia, they typically think of childhood leukemia,
right?
Correct.
Correct.
So is there any kind of reasoning, explanation that you ever found for how that is acquired?
So I am 97% sure that, and this might be a whole new session, but I just did a research paper actually at Vassar on this. I'm pretty sure that I got it through being in Iraq.
Really?
So back in the 90s, if you remember, I don't know if you guys know this, but there was this thing called the Gulf War syndrome. All these soldiers from the 1990 war, the Saudi war, or not the Saudi war, I'm sorry, the Gulf War. All these soldiers came home. They would get sick. They had different ailments. Some of them had cancer. Some of them had other issues going on. And the Army never really, or the military, the DOD never really
Looked into it too much. I
mean, I think they knew what it was. So in my research, they knew what it was, and they knew that if they admitted to it, that it would bankrupt the United States of America because of how many lawsuits it would bring.
Wow.
So back in the 70s and 80s, we started making munitions that could penetrate. We were in a fight with the Soviet Union, right, to conquer the world or whatever you want to call it. And so we had to figure out how we could beat their better armored tanks over in Germany, East Germany and West Germany right at the time. So the Russians came out with a new weapon that had unbelievable up-armored tanks. So we had to figure out how to penetrate those tanks because at the time we didn't have any weapons like that. It would have just literally hit it. Whatever we had, it would have hit it and it would have
Fell right off the side.
So we started putting depleted uranium in our munitions. And at the time,
Holy shit.
and right. And so now if you go to any of the old test ranges, almost all of them are either shut down or they're owned by the Department of Defense, or they're owned by the Department of Energy, or they're owned by the Department of Army, and they're locked down so nobody can get on them because of all of the residual. Oh yeah.
And that is almost like a clear sign of a cover up. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
depleted uranium.
I've gone through NSC records from the 70s with Ford, back to when Ford was president, when he took over after Nixon, talking about the use of not actually talking about, but when it was brought up in the conversation he was having with the generals in the Oval Office, they said, well, we'll talk about that at a different time, because they knew that transcript was being recorded.
Well, I mean, it's not that crazy. I mean, you're literally exposed to carcinogens. Carcinogens cause cancer, radioactive material, nuclear.
Exactly. Well, I mean, at the time they were claiming that because it was depleted uranium, that there was no carcinogenic effect. But research now and over the last 5 to 10 years, I would say, has basically proven. And another thing was saying that the low doses of that uranium, of that radioactive part of it, they were saying, oh, there's no way that could cause cancer. But now they're actually seeing results, like people in factories that have depleted uranium, people in like nurses or techs in the medical field that use like x-rays and stuff. They're doing studies now of all of these nurses and techs and everything to see that low doses of radioactive material, like, and it can be depleted uranium or whatever,
have a carcinogenic effect.
Yeah.
Okay. And now why are they putting this in munition? That creates armor piercing rounds?
So that the kinetic energy explodes when it so the energy from the munition into like the side of a tank, so that the product of that kinetic energy will actually go into, it will be hard enough and forceful enough to get into the tank instead of just bouncing off.
Okay.
So that was the purpose of the initial.
So it has extreme density.
Right.
And it's mini explosions, right? It's
basically, yeah, mini.
Is that, so how do they make armor piercing rounds now? That's like a prototype armor piercing round?
So I don't know exactly if armored piercing rounds have the depleted uranium in them. I just know that they're designed specifically to go through armor. I don't know if there's, I didn't do the research on like like a M0, right? Like right. But what I will say is that we dropped a shit ton of freaking ammunition on areas in Iraq and at the Kuwaiti border in the 90s.
With depleted uranium. And you handled it?
There are cancers. The cancer rate in southern Iraq and in other areas in Iraq, and then in the Baltics during the Kosovo conflict, and then in Afghanistan, the cancer rates on the local population is absolutely insane.
And this is what your paper supports?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Wait, now how does because you said this is in the 90s, how does it actually translate to when you were in the military? Because you were in those areas,
Right.
the same areas?
Because it was in the areas, and it sort of got into the groundwater, it got into the sand, it got into the air, but also, and then in 2001 when we went in, we used the same ammunition in the same areas, right? So it's sort of like a double effect in those areas, which is really what's causing it's causing a really bad crisis in Iraq right now.
So when you get diagnosed with leukemia, obviously you kind of rebelled against it and said like, fuck you, that's not real. What happens when it actually becomes real? I'm assuming you're in the hospital. There's some kind of something happening right away.
Yeah, so I got put in, I was lucky enough to get into the bone marrow transplant down in New York Presbyterian, which is a great team, and I owe all of them my life. I don't remember this, but you know, my mom told me later on that, I don't know if she was just told this. She says that I was told this too, I think, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. But, you know, she said that I had around a 20% chance of living at the time because the leukemia was so intense, and throughout my entire bloodstream. So they were able to do a bone marrow transplant. So they did chemo. Chemo didn't work. It would disappear, but then it would come back within a matter of days. So then they had to do a bone marrow transplant pretty much right away. The donor was actually from Germany. They actually flew the bone marrow from Germany over to the United States. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Can you explain the extreme measures that it takes to do a bone marrow transplant? Because obviously bone marrow is present in every bone in your body. And what's that like? How many surgeries? How crazy is it? How rare?
So the bone marrow transplant itself, I was pretty drugged up when that happened. I can't really tell you that I remember much of it. I do remember there being pain in the beginning and then pain sort of at the end as I was coming like in and out of the fog, right? But it was sort of like a 24-hour period, and I got really lucky. My body had a really good response to it. A lot of people are not as lucky and as fortunate as I was. They have complications, they have issues in the middle of it, they have to redo it over and over again. Like sometimes it doesn't take. And so it can be really hard to deal with physically and just mentally. But for me, like I said, I got lucky. It only did it once. My process was I was attached to an IV. It went through an IV. I was drugged up pretty good, so I was listening to like, you know, Tom Petty and stuff like that.
Having a good old time
myself. But yeah, I mean, there were some moments there where it was interesting.
So it goes to an IV. I wasn't expecting that, and I feel like I'm stupid now. But my thought is they're taking bone marrow and they're literally transplanting it.
So when they test your bone marrow, right? So they have to do a bone marrow biopsy, to like test it before and after, and then repeatedly over every 2 or 3 months for years after that. The bone marrow biopsies hurt like a motherfucker. They're basically taking a needle that big, and they're sticking it in your back, in your lower back or in your upper butt or somewhere back there. And they're going all the way till it touches the bone. And then they literally have to scrape the bone. So that hurts. Yeah. And that's just a local anesthetic, which barely works. So that's not any kind of,
fuck that.
Yeah. But so I had to do that a few times. That wasn't fun.
Jesus.
So as soon as a bone marrow transplant happens, or you react well to it, is that like, hey, you're pretty much...
That's what I thought. Yeah.
That's what you thought.
That's what I thought. I mean, I will say that I've been in remission since then.
Okay.
But I've had complication after complication after complication from the drugs, from the chemo, from the bone marrow transplant itself. Like it saves your life, but all these drugs, the chemo and everything, it also destroys your body too.
Yeah.
I've had 2 full hip replacements.
Oh my God.
It weakens your bones that much?
So what happens is either the steroids or the bone marrow transplant. So I was on a shit ton of steroids after, prednisone mostly. And between the steroids and the bone marrow transplant, they're not really sure which one did it. It could have been a combination it was probably a combination of both. But it gave me avascular necrosis, which is a disease that basically sucks the oxygen out of your blood around the joints, which then eventually eats away at your joints. Because you don't have that blood flow, you don't have the circulation, and then the bone around your joint, it just collapses. And so I have it in both of my knees still, but the pain, my knees haven't collapsed, and the pain is not, it's not bad. I mean, some days are worse than others, you know, but for the most part, I can get around on them. I don't want to get the replacements in my knees yet, because as soon as you get them, then you're on like a clock, right? Then you got to get them every 10 or 15 years or however long it is. So like my hips are on a clock right now. So, you know, but my hips got really bad to the point where I couldn't walk for a long time.
Damn.
So,
And that's from that disease, your hips
from
too?
that disease. Yep. My hips, my knees, my shoulder, my right shoulder. Even I feel like I get really bad pain in my ankles sometimes. So I haven't actually gotten like x-rays and stuff on them, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was in there, because some days are just, the pain is unbearable.
So just to get back to the timeline a little bit.
Yeah.
You're diagnosed.
Yep.
Bone marrow transplant happened. You're diagnosed in what year?
January of 2015.
2015. Then you get bone marrow transplant, which is a success.
Success.
What year is that?
That was later that year. I believe it was like July or August of that year, I want to say.
But that's not the end of it. Then you need to be on medicines.
Right. So I had to stay down in the city, not in the hospital, but they have like this, like, so when you get a bone marrow transplant and chemo, your immune system is shot. They basically tell you you're a baby. So you can't go outside. You can't go anywhere, right? You can't eat food anywhere. Like everything has to be fresh food, literally made right in front of you, so that you don't get any kind of anything. Because any kind of small sickness, a
Take
cold,
you right out.
could kill me.
Yeah.
At that point, because my immune system is just shot. There is no immune system. So for the longest time, I kind of had to sort of isolate myself.
And how do they build that back up?
It just takes time.
Takes time.
Hold up now. I got to stop right there. Or I got to go with what you just said right there. You have to isolate yourself after all that. Can people come and see you, or is that even dangerous?
That is dangerous. People can come and see you as long as they know that they are healthy. They have to wear a mask, and I'm wearing a mask. So basically like COVID, right?
Damn.
Everyone had to wear a mask. I had to wear a mask. They had to wear a mask.
How tough was that?
It was tough.
How long
Being
did that
isolated.
last too? 2016 to how long?
I don't know. I mean, I would say maybe, so that was in like August of, or maybe July of 2015. So probably maybe to the beginning of 2016 was really the most strict aspects of it. And then after that, I really couldn't really eat out for a while still, but like I could hang out with people, and I could kind of like, if people wanted to come over to the house, my parents' house, I could kind of see them, and like we could be outside, you know, like that was a big thing. My doctor said, yeah, if you want to go hang out outside, you know, then that way it's not as, you know, inside, you know, and the germs aren't getting around and stuff like that. But I would say by mid 2016, I didn't really have to worry about that at all anymore. So for about a year, I would say, maybe a little less.
And then your life starts to return to normalcy somewhat, because you have, you know,
I mean, I was in and out of the hospital because every time I would get a cold, or every time
it was bad.
I would have a stomach bug where I was,
Yeah.
right. So like every time anything like that was like, okay, you have to be on IV hydration. You have to be on IV antibiotics. So you have to go back. So I was in and out of the hospital for a good 2 years.
Because
after
everything's
that.
high risk for you.
Exactly.
Because you're immunocompromised.
Yes.
And
Yep.
are you still?
Technically, yeah. I mean, technically, I mean, I don't think that I'm definitely not immune compromised like I was
Right.
Back then.
5 years ago. Yeah.
Like, was COVID extra fucked up? Like, were you not able to go anywhere?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. COVID was extra stressful for me.
Yeah.
But
I think we have an interesting theme on the show that it's recurring. We kind of hear about different people's trauma and their story, and you seem like, especially in your line of work and the way you are, you're like really solid and like maybe like non-reactive to things like this. Did you feel like you had to support your loved ones around you for what was going on with you, when really you should have been the one that was like, you know, like emotionally?
I would say that I didn't feel like I had to support them. I would say that I definitely saw them hurting because of what was going on with me. And I knew in my mind through everything that I've already been through the military, through deployments, through basic training, like I knew that I was resilient. I knew that I had a very good mental approach to all this. So yeah, I mean, there were times where I would just look at my mom and I would say, stop crying. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get through this. Like, it's not going to fucking beat me. Like, I'm going to fucking win.
Like you're making sure she's okay.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Which is backwards in a sense.
Yeah.
It is and it isn't though, because I've been there. You know, when
I'm sure you've been
when
there.
people came out to support me, I always had to tell everyone, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm not dead.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people think you're just saying that, but I mean, for me, I really felt it, right? Like I'm sure for you, the same thing. Like yeah.
And when people are constantly worried about you, it's like, no, it's done. We're good.
Yeah.
It's like you want to put it away and continue on.
I just want to be treated like everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right. So your
Hold on, I have one more part, because I know it must have been also like really, really hard, because like you were away for a long time. Like you had like a whole community of people that like you were like a part of, right? This community of people, and everyone knew you. You were a popular dude, and then like you know, people might have not seen you for like a number of years because of your deployments. You come back and then maybe they still didn't see you until your diagnosis, and like your appearance changed a lot. Was there like a level of like people were looking at you like way different?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny you say that because I completely forgot about this, but I mean, look at me now, right? Like you knew me back when,
your
back
appearance
then,
definitely shifted.
you know, yeah, right. So, you know, and then when I was on the steroids, what prednisone does is it really blows up. And I'm sure you've seen pictures on some social media somewhere of me where
saw the
I was
comparison on Facebook. That's what I'm referencing.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I would walk up to people that I've known my whole life in that moment, right, where I was blown up and my neck was blown up and everything. And they would look right, and my eyes were puffy, and they would look right at me and be like, and they would shake my hand saying, but I could just tell that with their look in their eyes, they had no clue who I was.
wow.
And that's how. And I would go into Madison's, or I'd go into the public house, or I'd go into wherever, and yeah, I'd get some weird looks, right? Like I would get like some looks like, the hell's that? You know, like I tell people, I literally looked like the Michelin Man. I was like just everything about me was. And so, yeah, that was a little hard in the beginning, but again, like I knew that it is what it is. It was what it was. Right. So, for me to just kind of hide in the corner or hide in my house or hide in my apartment, you know, like that's not me.
Not an option.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing you, and I didn't recognize you. And then also, like on top of that, being that you had went and served for our country, and then you get that. Yeah. Like that makes me fucking pissed.
What I will say is there were a few fundraisers thrown for me to help me through, and I still have medical bills, but I couldn't tell you where I'd be right now if I didn't have help from the community. I mean, like you said, like I knew a lot of people, especially in Pleasant Valley. And, you know, shout out to PV because, man, I love you guys. And I really don't think I could have made it this far without the help and support and the love of everyone in Pleasant Valley that helped out. I mean, yeah, the fundraisers, just, I can't even tell you, for me and my family, gonna get me a little teary-eyed here. But yeah, I mean, yeah, look, I know I try to come off as tough and brave, but you know, there's been times where suicide was a real thought in my head for a long time, a few times. And I'm not ashamed to talk about it now, you know, but
I actually just lost a very dear friend of mine who grew up in Pleasant Valley with me, went to high school with me, and to suicide.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I've lost a couple veteran friends that, yeah, same thing.
How did you get through that? Because, you know, what was your way to
Real quick,
get rid of those thoughts?
Before you answer that, when was it? In the midst of what time frame?
I would say after I was in remission, there was complication after complication. So besides that, I had a heart attack. I had congestive heart failure. I had, what do you call it? When the blood, what is it called? Leg clots. I would get leg clots. I had all of these things happen to me one after another. And so it was a grind. I had to be stable mentally through that time period. And it wasn't even really the cancer fight. It was everything that happened after I was in remission. For the longest time too, I was in and out of the hospital. I couldn't get all I wanted to do was get my life back together.
Yeah.
I remember when I got diagnosed with the AVN, the doctor was like, you never ever, like, one of the things that I love doing because of the military was running or jogging, working out. He's like, if you wanna keep your knees and hips and stuff, you're never gonna be able to run again.
Damn, bro.
And at the time I was still technically in the Army National Guard because they hadn't medically discharged me yet. Mm-hmm. And like the plan was, like, I was in remission, you know, I was this and that. I was thinking I was going to be able to my unit just got the call to deploy again. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back with these guys. You know, I freaking trained these guys, or I deployed with these guys, you know, like, hell yeah, I'm going back. And then the news from the guy was like, yeah, you're never going to be able to. And as soon as he said you're never going to be able to run again, I knew I couldn't be in the Army anymore.
Right.
I think working out too is such a coping mechanism for anyone.
Is.
Like,
yeah.
You know, it's for me, it's everything. Like, I ran 2 marathons, I run Spartan races, I run all kinds of shit. So
are you able to work out to a degree now? Sorry.
Very good.
Cut you off.
Not really.
What is your coping mechanism now? What is your
so to tie that in with one of the other questions was how I think either Bryce or you asked was, you know, how did I get through that?
Yeah.
Right. So coping mechanism and how I got through that was my parents actually bought me a dog. And I mean, that dog is my best fucking friend.
I love that.
He cuddles with me every night. He's and so I thank whoever it is you want to thank. I'm actually engaged now, and my fiance and I bought a house a few months ago and everything.
That is beautiful.
And
Congratulations.
but thank you. But one of the things was she had to know that dog was very high priority.
what kind of dog?
A Bernese Mountain Dog.
Oh, the best,
snap.
dude. A big motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's a bear.
Yeah. And we actually have 2 now. We have Motley, his wife. They had puppies a couple of years ago. Cutest puppies in the
Dude,
world.
I love this story. This story.
My heart just warmed up.
But I remember my toughest moments when I was really thinking about doing something stupid, right?
Yeah.
I remember specifically one time out of nowhere, Boomer was the name of my dog, just ran in from the other room, jumped up on the bed and just started licking my face.
They know.
And I was crying. I was literally on the brink. And he started licking my face, that motherfucking dog.
Saved your life.
And yeah, I mean, that dog, and I tell people all the time, that dog saved my life. And I don't really get into it like I just did. And they're just looking at me like, oh yeah, no, it's funny. Yeah, he saved your life. He's a good dog.
Actually did.
But like literally, he probably saved my life. Yeah.
That's incredible.
So coping mechanism, I grab that dog and I cuddle up with him. Yeah, absolutely.
How big is he? Like 150?
No. He's I think the last time he got weighed, he was like 105.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
send a picture
110?
to Bryce so that he can
can
pop
put it
up on the screen?
He's all over Facebook. We'll put him on. Boop.
You better. I want him on
You
the
can send it
pod.
to me later.
I have a whole Instagram of him and Motley.
That's awesome.
An account just for them. So yeah, I'll shoot that over to you.
I love it.
Shouts out to
I love it.
Boomer. You're a good boy, Boom. Good boy, Boomer.
Boom, boom.
He's going to be listening.
Dude, what a story, Nick. Holy
So-
shit. I knew it was crazy, but dude, I didn't know it was this crazy, dude.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the.
That's not even the end of it.
I know.
Wait, this is how I want to segue it though, because I understand. Well, I can't say I understand, but holy shit, you're on this path. You come back from your second tour. You're ready to go for your dream job. And then you are diagnosed with leukemia. You beat it. And then you're like, okay, I'm going back. And then they put a nail in the coffin of your dream and say, you can't even run. So you're at the lowest of lows, but you're still fighting every day. And boom comes in. Backup. Here's your backup. He's keeping you alive.
Yep. He's got my 6. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
now after everything you've been to, everything you've been through, you decide Politics.
Well, yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah.
How?
What are the two biggest things that are affected by politics? Foreign affairs and healthcare.
Yeah. Well, and I wish that was exactly why.
That's a good point. I like that.
I got to the point where I was staying out of the hospital for about 2 to 3 months at a time, maybe 4 months if I got lucky. And so I decided that I had to do something, right? At that point, I qualified for Social Security because I had been sick. I qualified for Medicare and Medicaid and all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? I just can't do this. So I had to figure out how to reinvent myself because obviously I couldn't do what I was good at, which was the military or shooting stuff. And like I couldn't do that anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So I had to figure out something else. So I actually forgot how I found out about it, but I found out that there was an opening on the town board in Pleasant Valley. There was a town board member, I guess, had resigned early or something like that before me. And so I called them up and I said, "Hey, what do I got to do?" Like, yeah, I'd be interested. It was a part-time job, right? So and it wasn't demanding to the point where I had to do it every day or even, you know, every other day, really. So I felt like it would have been a perfect fit at the time. And it was a way for me also to sort of give back to Pleasant Valley after everything that they had just done for me.
I was thinking that.
Yeah. So I really wanted to try to help bring Pleasant Valley into the modern age, sort of just not necessarily anything crazy, but just, you know, rebuild the rec program, you know, for kids, you know, like stupid little things like that, you know? And so I applied and they accepted me. So I got on as an appointed person. And then I ran that fall for the seat for a 1-year term because I was still covering up for the other term for the guy that resigned. And then I was on there for a year and then I had to run again. And so I ran again. So I ran twice and I got appointed once, but yeah, I was on the town board for a while. And then I got mixed up in some local campaigns and a congressional campaign. And that's how I got the job over at the congressman's office. So that took me from there to there.
Is that Mark Molinaro?
No, that was John Faso at the time.
Oh, okay.
And then after John Faso, I did a very similar job that I did for John Faso for Anthony Delgado, or Tony Delgado. He's now up in Albany. He's the lieutenant governor of New York now. So.
And those are conservative politicians, correct?
John Faso was a conservative politician, but Antonio Delgado was a Democrat.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you were doing what with them exactly? You were helping their campaign?
So for the way I got onto Congressman Faso's sort of district office work was I did a little bit with his campaign originally as a volunteer, and then I kind of stayed in touch with him, and then an opening popped up and I got on there. But then for Delgado's position, I was ending with Faso and just sort of transitioned, and then I kind of contacted them and they said, yeah, we'd love to have you stay on as our veterans liaison, which was cool because then I got to work with the VA and I got to work with veterans in the area and I got to really try to make an impact there.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the best and the worst part about being in politics?
I like that question.
How much time you got?
All night, baby.
Yeah. Well, I would say the best part is just some of the personal responses you got from people, like, hey, like, thank you, right? Like, thanks for helping us out. Like, if I can help you out, then I will. But some of that was just sort of the responses, and because that you need that to kind of keep going, right? Because there's so much bad. The worst part was when I was working for Congressman Faso, and I got a call one day from an angry constituent because of a certain vote that was happening on the House of Representatives floor in DC that day. And they were calling to voice their frustration. And I'm not going to get into left and right and, you know, that sort of stuff. But the guy on the other end was saying, how could Republicans do this? You're killing people. My wife has cancer. I hope you get cancer and die.
Someone said that to you?
Yeah. And I was calm about it. I actually told the person exactly what I'd been through at that point. And him and I had about a 15 to 20 minute conversation. And we left that phone call. I mean, we weren't friends, but I would say that we both calmed down and we both were able to kind of see the different sides of things. And it ended up being a decent phone call. So even though the worst part of that was when when he told me I wish you get cancer and die, I would say that probably the best part about it too was also just like that sort of, once when you realize like you get that emotional response out, right? And then you can sit there and talk to someone and really sort of give that time. And then, yeah.
What a fucking
Did
thing.
you say to did you say to him, well, listen, buddy, I got cancer and lived?
Yeah. Well, I don't exactly remember what I said to it, but under the circumstances, I was working for a congressman, right? So I couldn't really react a certain way, right? I had to say, well, I probably said something to the effect of, hey man, I get it. I actually understand. I actually was diagnosed with leukemia in 2015. This is my experience and I probably went through it. And I am incredibly sorry for the trauma and just everything that you and your family's been through. I would never wish that on anybody.
You must have been sweating as you were saying that.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I just remember leaving that phone call and saying, okay, at least that person is somewhat not gonna hate me after that, or just, so yeah, because you never know what that other person that you're looking at or that you're talking to has been through.
True.
So
Hit him with it, Tone.
1 second. What are you currently doing now? Are you in politics still or no?
no, I'm in finance. I'm a financial advisor. Yep.
Oh, okay. Where?
Where do you work?
Northwestern Mutual.
Plug it, bro.
Yeah.
Let's get you some people. Send some people your way.
Yeah. Hey, anybody listening to this right now or watching this right now, I'll give you a free consultation, free comprehensive full plan. If you wanted to come by the office, we're right in front of the Poughkeepsie IBM there in those office buildings on Route 9, right across the street from the Barnes and Noble. So yeah, come on in.
What are you dealing typically? IULs and fucking what do you do?
We literally do everything. So,
Okay.
yeah, we don't try to, we do investment services. So wealth accumulation, wealth management, things like that. We also do just life planning in general, right? So it doesn't matter if you make $100,000 a year, $1 million a year, or $50,000 a year. Let's come and talk about it. Let's see how we can meet you, build a relationship with you, and achieve those goals that you have for you and your family for now and in the future, all the way to the end. We maximize tax strategies, what bucket to take from. If the market's down and your 401k is down that year, should we look for another avenue of approach now so that in 30 years from now, you're not gonna run out of your 401k too early and just run out of money in retirement, things like that. So yeah.
Protection of your financial future.
Providing that financial security.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to hit you with the big question. Here it is. And you've been through a lot of life. So at the end of the day, what is your message to everyone out there?
Develop your relationships with your friends and family. Because at the end of the day, that's really all you got. And you're going to know who your true friends are. And I'm not saying that I don't have true friends or that, I'm just saying that the people that support you throughout life are going to come and go. Make sure you hold on to that and you understand that, because that's really everything at the end of the day. So yeah,
I like that.
Just try to be happy and do what makes you happy also.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how short life is really going to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nick, thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
that was an
incredible
incredible podcast. Your
Incredible.
story is ridiculous. So thank you again.
Appreciate it.